It was less poetic, but somehow more appealing. "I like that approach," she said slowly, her voice quiet but firm. "I've been half a person for too long, shrinking myself to fit into spaces that weren't meant for me. I want to become whole again. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. Both of us whole, both of us strong, both of us better together than apart, but still functional alone if necessary." She paused, looking out at the rolling land, letting the words settle between them like a promise. Jonah nodded, studying her with a mix of respect and something softer, something he rarely let show. They rode further, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the eastern boundary where the land rose into rocky hills dotted with scrub pine. He pointed out a small cabin in the distance, weathered and worn but still standing. "Line shack," he explained. "Cowboys use it during roundup or when checking on herds in the winter. There are 4 of them scattered across the property. Sometimes, during bad storms, they're the difference between life and death for men caught out on the range." Clara's brow furrowed. "Do you still work roundup yourself?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Every year," Jonah said, eyes forward but voice calm. "Can't ask men to do work I'm not willing to do alongside them. That's part of earning their respect, and part of being who I am." He glanced at her, expression softening just slightly. "Catherine hated when I went on roundup, said it wasn't proper for a ranch owner to get his hands dirty. But I wasn't raised to stand by and watch while others sweat. You lead by doing. I wouldn't ask you to stop," Clara said carefully. "It's part of who you are, though I admit I'll worry when you're out in dangerous conditions." Jonah's lips quirked in a small, almost imperceptible smile. "That's more than Catherine ever offered," she complained, "but she never truly worried. There's a difference, and you care differently." They rode back slowly as the day waned, the late afternoon light turning everything gold. By the time they reached the ranch, both were tired, but carried a quiet satisfaction from the day's work. Sam met them in the yard, his weathered face creased with lines that suggested something like approval as he helped Clara dismount. "She's getting stronger in the saddle," Sam observed to Jonah. "Give her a few more weeks. She'll be riding like she was born to it." "That's the plan," Jonah said. He turned to Clara. "Sam's wife, Margaret, wants to invite you to dinner tomorrow night. She's trying to make amends properly. Are you willing?" Clara thought back to Margaret's stiff apology, the mix of pride and guilt she'd seen in her face. The invitation could be a genuine peace offering or another test. Either way, refusing would only create tension Clara didn't need. "I'm willing," she said finally. That evening, back at Mrs. Brennan's boarding house, Clara found herself restless. Tomorrow night was dinner with the Hastings. Saturday morning would mark a permanent change, her wedding. The weight of it pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She needed space, quiet, a moment to think. Slipping out of the boarding house, she wandered through Dawson Creek's quiet streets, the town settling into evening rhythms. Lamps glowed in windows, smoke curled from chimneys, families gathered for supper. Normal life continued while hers seemed on the verge of transformation. Eventually, her wandering brought her to the church, its white walls glowing softly in the dusk. The door was unlocked. Clara stepped inside, seeking not faith, but a peaceful space to process everything that churned inside her. Fear, hope, determination, and the faintest flicker of excitement, all tangled together in a confusing mass. The interior was dim, empty pews stretching before the simple altar. Clara settled in the back row, folding her hands in her lap, closing her eyes to let herself feel what she had been holding back all week. It was a strange comfort, the quiet and the space to breathe without expectation. "Thought I might find you here?" Clara turned to see Jonah silhouetted in the doorway, quiet as a shadow. He approached and took a seat in the pew beside her, moving with the ease of a man comfortable with silence. "How did you know where I was?" Clara asked, a faint trace of surprise in her voice. "Mrs. Brennan mentioned you'd gone for a walk," he said softly. "Only so many places in town to walk to. Something told me you'd need quiet space tonight." He studied her in the dim light, patient and still. Clara sat in the pew, letting the quiet settle over her like a soft blanket, but her mind was anything but quiet. Thoughts tumbled and twisted memories of the past few weeks, of challenge faced, of doubts and fears that had followed her across the plains, the ranch, the horses, Jonah. All of it felt like stepping into a life she hadn't imagined for herself, but it also felt inevitable, like the turning of the seasons, something that could not be resisted. Jonah's presence beside her was calm, grounded, a steadying force she didn't realize she had been craving. He didn't speak for a long while, just let the silence wrap around them. And in that silence, Clara felt her chest loosen. The tightness of worry and anticipation that had been strangling her began to ebb, replaced by a cautious hope she hadn't dared to admit before. "You'll make it," Jonah said finally, his voice low, carrying that same quiet authority he had when he was out on the range. "Whatever comes, you'll make it through. You're stronger than you think." Clara looked up at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I hope you're right," she said softly. "I don't want to fail, not now, not when it matters." "You won't fail," he assured her, eyes steady. "And if you ever feel like you might, remember you're not alone. Not anymore. You've got people who believe in you, people who will ride with you through storms, literal or otherwise." She let the words sink in, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The idea of partnership, of shared strength, of someone standing by her side through life's chaos, it was intoxicating. And for the first time in a long time, Clara allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't merely surviving, but truly living, truly thriving. They stayed in the church for a while longer, neither speaking much. Outside, the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, and the wind carried a chill that hinted at winter's approach. Eventually, Jonah stood, offering her a hand. "Come on," he said. "Time to head back before Mrs. Brennan starts wondering." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, the evening air crisp against their faces. The land rolled beneath them in soft shadows, the outlines of trees and hills blurring together as night deepened. Clara felt the tension of the day's uncertainties give way to something steadier, firmer, more certain. By the time they reached the ranch gates, the lanterns glowed warmly, casting welcoming light over the yard. Sam was still there, leaning against the fence, waiting for their return. He nodded once, a simple gesture of acknowledgement, but it carried the weight of years of experience, of understanding the subtle dynamics of trust and loyalty. Inside the main house, Clara settled into the familiar comfort of the living room, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. She thought of tomorrow night's dinner with the Hastings, of the challenges and reconciliations that awaited. But for now, she allowed herself this rare moment of peace, of reflection. The storm of change was still coming, but for tonight, there was calm, and in that calm, Clara found a strength she hadn't fully recognized until this moment, the strength to face what was coming, to embrace it, to survive it, and perhaps even to flourish. Morning came slow and golden over the ranch, spilling light across the fields and casting long shadows behind the barns. Clara rose with the sun, feeling the ache of yesterday's long ride still in her muscles, but it was a good ache, a reminder that she was alive, that she had moved, that she had fought through another night of doubt and uncertainty. She dressed quickly, pulling on her boots and a worn jacket, and stepped outside, letting the cool air wake her fully. Jonah was already out, tending to the horses. His movements were smooth, practiced, each motion a study in efficiency and care. Clara paused at the edge of the barn, watching him for a moment, the way the morning light caught the angles of his face, the way his hands moved deftly over the reins and saddles. It was easy to forget, in moments like this, that he had a past, that he carried burdens he rarely spoke of, but it was also comforting. There was a constancy to him, a steadiness she hadn't realized she'd been craving. "Morning," she called softly. Jonah looked up, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Morning. Sleep well." "Better than I thought I would," she admitted, stepping closer. "The quiet, it helps, gives you room to think." He nodded, understanding. "Sometimes the land speaks better than people do, gives you answers if you're willing to listen." Clara tilted her head, considering his words. There was truth in them. Out here, surrounded by endless sky and rolling hills, the problems of the past few weeks seemed smaller, more manageable. The land demanded patience and attention, and it rewarded those who worked it honestly. It reminded her that life didn't have to be all chaos and noise. Sometimes it could just be. They worked together through the morning, checking fences, feeding the livestock, letting the rhythm of labor ground them. Conversation was minimal but easy, filled with the kind of shared understanding that didn't need constant words. Clara felt herself slipping into a comfort she hadn't known she needed, a sense of belonging that had eluded her for so long. By mid-afternoon, the sun hung high and hot in the sky. Clara took a moment to rest on the porch, wiping sweat from her brow, and let her gaze wander across the expanse of the ranch. The horizon stretched endlessly, golden and raw, full of possibilities. She thought of the challenges ahead, the Hastings, the negotiations, the careful balance of trust she would need to maintain, but she also felt a spark of excitement, a thrill at the life she was carving out for herself. Jonah joined her, leaning against the railing beside her. "You've got fire in you," he said, quiet but firm. "Not everyone can take this life and stand tall in it, but you can. I can see it." Clara looked at him, heart quickening. It wasn't just the compliment, it was the belief behind it, the faith he had in her that she had yet to fully have in herself. "Thanks," she murmured. I'm trying." "I know," he said simply, "and that's what counts. Keep trying. Keep moving forward. No matter what comes, you've got what it takes." The afternoon stretched lazily into evening, and Clara felt a peace she hadn't allowed herself in years. There were storms ahead. Sure, life had never promised ease, but she felt ready, armed with new resolve, new understanding, and a newfound trust in the people beside her. As the first stars began to prick the sky, Clara stepped inside, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. She was learning, growing, and slowly but surely claiming a place in this rugged, beautiful, unforgiving land. And with Jonah by her side, and the quiet strength of the ranch beneath her feet, she knew she could face anything. Evening settled over the ranch like a velvet curtain, soft and heavy, and the wind whispered through the fields, carrying the scent of dry grass and dust. Clara stood on the porch, hands resting on the railing, letting the fading light wash over her. She could hear the low hum of the animals settling for the night, the gentle creak of the barn door swinging closed, and somewhere in the distance, the faint cry of a coyote. Everything felt alive, yet still, as if the world had paused just for a breath. She thought back over the weeks, the way she had arrived, unsure, hesitant, carrying fear and suspicion like a shield around her heart. The rough hands that had brought her here, the unknown dangers of the frontier, the weight of her own doubts, none of it had prepared her for the quiet strength she had discovered in herself. Out here, under the wide-open sky, she had learned to breathe differently, to move differently, to live differently. She had discovered that survival wasn't just about holding on. It was about finding your footing and claiming your own ground. Jonah joined her silently, leaning against the railing with that calm, steady presence that had become a constant in her life. He didn't speak immediately. Sometimes they both just watched the land, letting the silence say more than words ever could. Finally, he said, "You've come a long way." Clara let a small smile cross her face, a mixture of pride and disbelief. "I guess I have. I didn't think I could, but here I am." "You're stronger than you know," he replied. "This land, it tests you, pushes you, but it also rewards those who don't give up. And you haven't given up, not once." Her gaze drifted across the fields, the fence lines, the barns, and the pastures stretching into the horizon. Each corner of the ranch held a story now, a memory of struggle, of discovery, of small victories she hadn't realized would matter so much. She thought of the mornings spent tending the animals, the afternoons learning to ride with balance and grace, the nights of quiet conversation, an understanding that had slowly built a bridge between her and Jonah. The sunset painted the sky in strokes of orange, pink, and deep purple, and she felt a calm settle in her chest, one she hadn't known in years. It was the calm that comes from knowing you belong, even if the world is harsh and unyielding. She had arrived broken, wary, and uncertain, but she was leaving that fear behind, piece by piece, day by day. Jonah reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Whatever comes next," he said, We face it together. You don't have to carry it all alone anymore." Clara nodded, letting the words sink in. The trust she had hesitated to give, the faith she had struggled to feel, was finally blossoming here. In him, in the land, in herself. She had found allies she hadn't expected, and strength she hadn't dared to imagine. It was a quiet kind of power, steady and unshakable, forged in sweat, patience, and courage. Night fell fully, and the stars emerged, countless and brilliant against the dark canvas of the sky. Clara inhaled deeply, feeling the crisp night air fill her lungs, feeling the heartbeat of the ranch beneath her feet. The past no longer weighed her down. The threats, the fears, the unknowns, they were still out there, but she knew she could face them. She had faced worse, and she had survived. She had learned that the land, the work, and the people she trusted were not enemies. They were guides, teachers, and companions on a path she now walked with confidence. She turned to Jonah, and for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a storm waiting to crash down. It felt like a horizon she could reach, one step at a time, with courage and heart. The ranch was no longer just a place she had been dragged to. It was home. The people she had met, the lessons she had learned, the resilience she had discovered, they were all hers. And as she watched the stars flicker overhead, Clara knew the story wasn't over. It never really would be. Life out here was vast, uncertain, and wild, but it was hers to live. She had faced fear, found trust, and claimed strength. She had arrived broken, but she would endure whole, and the ranch, the land, and the people she had grown to love would endure with her. And that, she realized, was more than enough.